Before we jump into today's episode, let's talk about something so many writers struggle with: structure. You're knee-deep in your first draft. You're lost and overwhelmed, second-guessing everything you write. It's like staring at a pile of puzzle pieces with no picture on the box. If that sounds familiar, I have a free 3-act worksheet just for you. This worksheet gives your story a clear framework so you know exactly what your beginning, middle, and end need to do, so you can stop spinning and start writing. Grab it free at nancypanuccio.com/act. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with 2 C's, nancypanuccio.com/act. Okay, on to today's episode. Most writers think they have to start with the plot, but you really have to start with the character's want, because without it, nothing your character does is going to feel purposeful, and the events will just be things that happen. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and book coach. Each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now, let's begin. Here's the first question I ask every writer I work with. What does your protagonist want? Almost every time, what I get back is a circumstance or a theme. She's trapped in her mother's alcoholism and doesn't know how to get free of it. He's been estranged from his daughter for 12 years and doesn't know why she stopped speaking to him. It's really about a woman trying to find herself after the marriage ended. Those are circumstances, but none of it is circling around a particular desire. They're putting them under some kind of pressure. They're clearly in pain, but it's not what the character wants. The want is what the character is moving toward, not what's being done to them. And everything that happens in the story is going to orbit around this want. So you want to nail that down. The writers who can answer that question specifically, concretely, in one sentence are the ones whose stories have forward motion from page 1. The ones who are murky on it, who can't answer that, are often the ones who feel like their story is stuck or slow or somehow not working without being able to name exactly why. So in this episode, we're talking about your main character's want, what it is, and why it's never the same at the end of your story as it was in the beginning. I want you to think of your character's want as something that's dynamic, not static. The first thing to know is that every character comes into the story already wanting something, not hoping, not suffering, really wanting. This gives the story a direction. There's a pull, something they're moving toward with enough urgency that it gets them to take action. And that want needs to be concrete enough to state in one sentence. For example, Ruth wants to reconcile with her estranged daughter before she dies. Nora wants to hold her marriage together after her son's suicide. Meg wants to rebuild her life after her husband empties the bank account and disappears. So, different stories, different stakes, different kinds of pain driving them. But every single one of those is concrete enough to name. Everyone gives the character a direction, and everyone is enough to get the story moving. So, for example, in The House in the Pines, Maya just wants to sleep. She's been suffering from insomnia for 3 days, and she's suffering really from drug withdrawal. Now, that is not the desire that's going to propel the rest of the story. It's just what she comes into the story wanting. So we establish that she has anxiety, and we don't know why she has it or why she's on anti-anxiety meds in the first place. But we know that she's in a compromised state. But the want that drives the engine of the story is not the insomnia or her addiction to anti-anxiety meds. It's solving the mystery about her ex-boyfriend and women who have died in his presence, particularly her best friend. In the novel You Are Here, Marnie comes into the novel wanting to cure her loneliness. She's been isolated since her divorce, and she wants to get out of the house and back into the world to connect with other humans again. She doesn't want romance. She doesn't want a relationship. She just wants contact. She wants to stop feeling invisible and lonely. That's how she comes into the story. But that want is going to morph in Act 2. In Anna Quinlan's novel, Black and Blue, Fran wants to escape her abusive husband. After 18 years, she's done. In Chapter 1, she's at the train station about to move to a new state. So if you can't state your protagonist's want in one sentence, that's where the work starts. You want to nail this down. You want to crystallize it. Most writers think they have to start with the plot, but you really have to start with the character's want, because without it, nothing your character does is going to feel purposeful, and the events will just be things that happen. And here's what most writers miss. The concrete want you establish at the beginning of your story isn't going to stay the same. The want is alive, it's dynamic, it moves with the character, it deepens under pressure, it shifts when the story forces the character to confront what they actually believe about themselves. And by the end, if something real has happened to your protagonist, the want looks different than it did at the beginning. So let's look at how your character's want evolves across all 3 acts. For example, in Act 1, Marnie comes into the story admitting to herself that she's lonely. It's one of the first things she says. She's isolated. She knows she has to get out of the house and start interacting with other humans. She wants connection. Very simple. She has no agenda. She has no plan. She just wants contact with other human beings. That's her Act 1 want. And it's enough to get her moving. She takes her friend Chloe up on her invitation to go on a walking tour. So now her desire is becoming more concrete. She's setting the goal in action. Your Act 1 want works the same way. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be real enough and urgent enough to get your character into motion. In Anna Quinlan's novel, Black and Blue, Fran's Act 1 want is survival, to escape her abusive marriage. In the first chapter, she's at the train station with her young son, about to start over in a different state with a new name and nothing else. The want is the engine. So Act 1 is where you turn the engine on. Okay, let's move on to Act 2. In Act 2, the want meets the world, and the world pushes back. For Marnie, she meets Michael on that walking tour, and suddenly the want narrows. It's not just connection anymore. It's this person, this relationship. The want has changed from getting out of the house to something more specific. Marnie and Michael slowly fall in love, and the moment the want gets specific, it gets complicated. Because Marnie has a fear running underneath everything she does. Her divorce didn't just end a marriage, it confirmed something she already believed about herself, that she's unlovable, that if someone really saw her, they'd leave. So what does she do? She deflects with humor. She keeps people close and at arm's length at the same time. She falls for Michael, but she's not just pursuing a relationship, she's testing a belief. This is what Act 2 does to your character's want. It exposes what's underneath it. It brings fear into contact with desire and forces your character to choose between them, usually more than once, at higher and higher cost each time. So let's say Nora, who wants to hold her marriage together after her son's suicide, Act 2 might force her to confront that the marriage was already broken before the tragedy. Maybe what she really wants isn't to hold the marriage together, it's not to be alone with her grief. The want she named in Act 1 starts to reveal something deeper underneath it. For Jess, who wants to get sober to reclaim her relationship with her daughter, Act 2 might force her to confront that sobriety alone won't fix what's broken between them. That what she really wants is to be a mother again, and she doesn't know if it's too late. The Act 2 want is messier than the Act 1 want is. It should be, because your character is starting to understand what they're really after, and that understanding is going to cost them something. For example, when Marnie finds out Michael contacted his ex-wife, the fear wins. She breaks up with him. She walks away first before he can leave her. The want she's been pursuing collapses, and she has to decide what she's going to do with that. And then we get to Act 3. Act 3 is where the want arrives at its truest form. For Marnie, after the walking tour is over and the co-protagonists are back in their hometown, Marnie walks to the park to meet Michael. She's carrying a gift she bought for him during that first excursion. She sees him, and this time she walks away, not because she doesn't want him, but because she no longer needs him to prove she's worth wanting. The loneliness that drove her out of the house in Act 1 is still there, but it's transformed. She can be alone without it being in exile, without being lonely. What I love about this ending is that we don't know if Marnie and Michael will get back together. It's ambiguous, but that's not the point. Her original want when we met her in Act 1 was to alleviate her loneliness. By Act 3, she can be alone without being lonely. That's transformation. And it happens because the want itself was never static. She didn't get what she thought she wanted in Act 1. She got something truer. The want she ended with isn't the want she started with. It's the want she didn't know she had. This is true across every kind of story. Ruth might reconcile with her daughter, or she might not. But by Act 3, what she wants from that reconciliation has changed. It's no longer about being forgiven. It's about saying what she needs to say before it's too late, regardless of what her daughter does with it. The want has matured. So the Act 3 want isn't always fulfilled, but it's always more truthful than the Act 1 want, because the story has done its work on the character, and the characters who go through something come out wanting different things. This is the work we go deep on inside the 3-Act story course, getting specific about what your character wants in Act 1, tracking how that want shifts and deepens across Act 2, and understanding what it becomes by Act 3. It's one of the first things we work on because everything else in your story depends on it. So here's the question to take back to your work in progress. What does your protagonist want right now? Not what's happening to them, but what they are moving toward. Say it in one sentence, make it concrete, make it specific. And then ask yourself, how will that want look different by the middle of your story? And different again by the end. If you can track that movement, if you can feel how the want deepens and shifts as your character moves through what the story puts in front of them, you have your story's engine. And that engine is everything. It makes writing the story so much easier to structure, so much easier to navigate as the writer. So, what does your protagonist come into the story already wanting? How will that want look different by the middle of your story? And how will it be different again by the end? Everything that happens will orbit around this central desire. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform. And if you're listening on Apple, please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.